Hey everyone. So if you've been interested in what I've been up to in quarantine, I have been in grad school for 2 months now at CalArts doing the MFA program in graphic design. So I wanted to share a little bit of what I've been working on. So ideally this will work. So I've been playing a lot with the idea that everything is art and everything is design, because it is. And I don't think you lose anything by having that broad definition when you consider it in your life. So the first thing I want to talk about is this video of me cleaning my room. I created this time lapse the other day, and it's kind of an interesting peek into my life. Now that we occupy our domestic spaces a lot more than we used to, we've been doing a lot of reconsidering both of our relationships and the people we're around, but also of ourselves, what we need, what we don't need. But I think more than that, this is really interesting because even though we're so used to getting a glimpse into people's domestic spaces now because of COVID, I think something like this is a lot of fun. You get to see life imagined in a different way. So the question is this art? And my answer would be it is. And certainly a lot of people enjoyed this clip more than some of my other work. So what am I doing right now? I'm in 6 classes, and the ideas taught in all of them can really be boiled down to a few different things. So there's image making, which is what graphic design is. We play with images, we make things, we illustrate things, we paint things, we draw things, we make things digitally, we cut things up and put them back together, we Photoshop things, we change the colors. That is what being a designer is all about. It's looking at something and manipulating it to fit some sort of purpose. I would like to expand that term in my personal work and generally to include an amount of play. That's going to be a main theme throughout a lot of this presentation. So the next thing I do a lot of is typography. There isn't a typography class for the first year MFA students at CalArts. It's called typographics. So it's not about typefaces and their histories. It's more about the arrangement of type on a page, and that's really important as my computer is freaking out. So as you can see, so this is like actually a novel that I wrote earlier in the year. I've been doing a lot of writing, and I used it as the source material to create this classical book arrangement. And that was our first project. So that's something that's fun. But even in the most classical and rigid sort of assignment, I always find ways to bring in like fun and play, and that's my thing. So the next aspect is production. So I was in a Halloween production class, and we created a virtual event instead of a party this year. And so these are 2 pieces of artwork that I made. This is a film clip, or this is rather a film still from a short movie I created, and this is a coloring book page that I made because our theme was ocean and fish, and someone asked me to do a coloring page. I'd never done either of these kinds of projects before. I'd never shot a movie and edited it. I'd never done a coloring book page. But in art school, when someone tells you to do something, you need to do something, you do it. Finally, I'm in a motion graphics class, and we make fun stuff like this all the time. We're supposed to do stuff that's better than this. This is something I just did on my own. But it's fun. This stuff is really engaging. I think a lot about psychology in my work, and your eye is always drawn to movement and faces before anything else. So I found a lot of that stuff in my work. So my personal design process, everything I do is colorful. Even the black and white stuff, in a way, is colorful. So this is for my company, my design firm Splat, that I launched just before school started. So you see, these are my feet. Everything I do is me, because I live at home and I don't have access to models and I don't have access to fancy photo equipment. So it's very grassroots, everything I do. I learned how to do lino cut and rubber stamp cutting this year. I taught myself that. I found a lot of the work that I do has nothing to do with my classes. It's things that I've personally found interesting and enjoyable and worth my time. If I had access to a Rizzo machine, I would probably make something like that. And yeah, and this, find inspiration everywhere. There's an Adobe Photoshop thing. There was an ad that was like very similar to this. Part of the process of design is recreation. How do I make this thing look better? How do I take an inspiration from something else and transform it into something new? So that's a lot of the work that I do. So my personal design process, in addition to color, I come from a background of drawing and painting. I'm not so much a designer. I came into design school not really knowing what graphic design was. And I think I'm probably going to live my entire life not fully knowing the extent and scope of what graphic design is and can be, because it's a field that's constantly changing. So this is like my bread and butter. I do a lot of drawing. I do a lot of painting. This is black marker pen with gouache against a graphic poster that I got for like $1 in San Francisco. This is a large drawing I did in marker, colored in and colored pencil, overlaid with these hands that were done separately and then digitally modified in. So illustration, graphic design, there is a happy balance between them, and often they can be even the same thing. So moving on more towards what people would consider to be graphic design. This was a project I did for one of my classes. We were supposed to have a poster that was mostly image-based and then one that was mostly type-based. This actually isn't the final version of the type poster. It wasn't postmodern enough. And by that, I mean I didn't actually play with the type enough to make it a typography-based poster. But I liked how these two looked on the page better than I liked the way the other two ended up looking together. And I think it really gets the message across of being able to create continuity, not only between different pieces, which is what's really important for branding, but between other aspects of my work and my design practice. So that's kind of a small insight onto the work that I create. Just like I said, these are two pieces that I created. This one was for a class. This was based on, I think it was like create an image that somehow shows something about yourself. And this was my obsession, the combination between whimsical and I think I said something like horror. And then this is just a fun thing I doodled in class and then modified onto a background. But stuff like this is very fun to me. Being able to be playful and bright and colorful is it's really important. And I think there's a tendency to be critical if something isn't incredibly serious or commercial or corporate, then it's not good design, which I don't think anyone actually believes that. But I think you are led astray from being too silly. But I think I've kind of gotten over people not taking me seriously. So this is a huge part of my work is the importance of play. I just wrote an article for Medium called The Importance of Play in Art and Design. And these are stacks of Play-Doh. This is just like fun stuff I did the first week of school. And being able to look at things and being able to, take anything, a small piece of anything, and make it interesting is really valuable. I think a lot about the work of Bruno Munari, and even like the doodles of Kurt Vonnegut, and how being able to invite play into the work that you do is something that's really important. Make everything at least a little bit playful is my motto. So this is, again, the table of contents from the classical book assignment that we had. And this, if you can make a table of contents interesting, the rest of your book is probably going to be interesting. So this is just, I mean, it's fake chapters, fake numbers, whatever. But if you can have an idea, this is multiple ideas, right? It's the idea between the red and the black, and it's the idea between these slants, and it's the idea between the reversal. It's the idea between these lines and what's in between them, versus this line in between two things, and that reversal and the red and the black, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of thought that goes on behind something that's simple like this. But what's really important to me is that anything I create has to have an element of me in it, even though you can look at this and say it's really different from a lot of the other work that I do. Well, it's still similar in that it's very playful, and that's important. So a thing I think about, even though we don't have a typography class that I'm in right now, I think about type all the time, and it's a pet of mine. It's something I think most graphic designers are really interested in varieties of levels. I'm also really interested in physical things. So as you see, these are like letters that I painted and then cut out. This is letters that I got, foam letters from like a craft store, and use that as branding for my company. And then this is just like before the first day of school, I got a flat tire and there was a wildfire in my neighborhood and the world was falling apart. And so I posted this online. You know, part of good design is making someone else feel something and being able to resonate with them. So, and I think typography does a really good job of that too. And it's something I think about all the time. So the other thing about typography and just about everything else in design is space. Um, you can have the same amount of elements and how they're arranged on a page vastly changes the way that you perceive them. If something is big versus small, it changes how we perceive them from a psychological point of view, from a social point of view, but also just from a good design point of view. So that's something that I'm learning to get better at, is to leave more space around things and try not to explode off the page all the time as much as I want to. And finally, movement is really important too. So I, as I mentioned, have been doing a lot of things in film. So I came into the school not knowing anything about film, not knowing any, like, didn't have a desire to do film at all. I'd done one short flip book stop motion thing in college, which I love very dearly. It's a small Polaroid flip book of like my pair of shoes walking across the room. It's cute. But I didn't really think that was going to be a huge part of what, you know, I did in school. And the one thing that I've really learned is that in graphic design, you can do anything else. You can be an artist and a painter. You can have an illustration heavy practice. You can have a typography heavy practice. And this isn't graphic design, although in a way, a lot of my work ends up being very graphic, very flat, very object focused. And so this is from a short movie that I'm working on right now. This is obviously a stop motion animation that, and it's really exciting to me to be able to explore those things in different ways, to be able to, you know, be exposed. The reason I started making stuff like this was because I'm in a surrealist film class, which has nothing to do with graphic design. And it's an amazing class where you have artists and designers and musicians and people from every program under the sky at the school, and I get to hang out and talk with them once a week, and that's amazing. So it's cool to be able to just randomly happen upon something exciting and definitely life-changing. These are 2 clips from the first movie I made. And the thing to remember about these is that, you know, I just started using this kind of software to create these things this year. This is the first thing I ever worked on. And I just did it purely out of fun. So there's a lot of room for me to grow and explore going forward. But it definitely brings me back to the concept of who am I in my artwork. So this is clearly not squiggles and it's not rainbow colors, but this is me, literally, this is me. And I find myself coming into my work a lot. And originally, I think I was very concerned about that because I like talking about myself and my work. But I think it's important, at least for me personally, that my practice be reflective of who I am as someone who is a young woman. My voice and my narrative is one that's strictly oppositional to a lot of the design canon, a lot of the writing canon, a lot of the art canon that's already out there. And so to be able to have my voice and my work heard is something that's really important. I've done a lot of work in the last 2 months. And even before that, I started writing again. I write a lot of poetry. I wrote 2 novels this year. I just finished my memoir. I wrote the last 2 books in between 8 and 9 days each. I do a lot of things, and being able to say that without coming off as cocky or, you know, bragging is really important. To be able to say I'm doing this work and I'm proud of it and it is good, is something that's really important. And I think we should normalize that kind of conversation in society. So it's important to be able to have a variety of skills, to be a writer, a designer, a painter, whatever, and to not feel that that is in some way a handicap to you, or that when someone looks at your resume and they say, oh, you're all over the place. that's more of a condemnation of their character and their assumptions about society than it is about you and your background. So I take that to heart. I continue to be very much myself, and that is going to be a part of my art practice going forward. When people hire me to do their designs, I want them to be hiring me for me rather than me as a tool to create graphic design. I don't think that's a very good use of my brain or my time. So as such, I've been doing some wacky fun stuff. Quarantine has treated me better than it could. I am cooped up at home a lot. And so because of that, I found time to really embrace who I am as a person and bring that into my personal work outside of grad school. None of these things have anything to do with grad school except this, which was used in an image making project. Started this YouTube channel to be able to bring a lot of my visions, my work to the public. If no one watches the videos, that's fine too. It's also a record for me to know what I've been working on at what times and what I've been thinking about. I've often found I don't read through my old journals from when I was younger because I really don't have any. Whereas this is something that I'll be able to look back on and hopefully enjoy going forward, and maybe cringe at a little bit too. This is a giant pencil I bought the other day. It has chalk in it, and I walk around town and I write little love notes to Los Angeles on the sidewalk. So finally, so this is me. This is my business card. I founded Splat Design before the school year started, and that is going to be my company going forth throughout my career. Obviously, I've been more caught up with doing schoolwork and writing than I have with taking on clients, partially because I wanted to make sure that my skill set was broad enough and good enough for me to take on clients and feel comfortable like charging money for work going forward. But I think that's an emotional balance I'll strike going forward. I did think it was worthwhile noting that everything that I do has a remnant of me in it. And that's something that's very important for my design practice, to be able to be young and confident enough in my work going forward, to be open about that. So this is more Splat stuff. I thought it was very interesting that my Splat personal work bleeds into my schoolwork. Like literally, look at this purple little thing here. That's such a designer tweak. And which was accidental when I put the images on the page and then I moved them closer because I was like, wow, that's so perfect. But myself is very continuous, and even though I've obviously worked on a bunch of different styles for illustration and drawing and a web comic and all sorts of other things, I do think it is good to have fun. These two guys actually made it into a lot of my homework and my short film. So my second one that is yet to be done. So that being said, thank you for listening. And before you leave, this is the latest project I've been working on. It's called Scarms. There's scarf arms. This actually came before the drawing, and now I'm trying to figure out how to create graphic design that is recognizable for these products. But I'm going to be making a bunch of these and more of these too. But it's just fun to be able to start with a very simple design idea and hash it out into something that is exciting and interesting and marketable and desirable, and a real product. I'm interested in film, but I'm also interested in product design, you know, from the very highfalutin art to the very commercial, fun, exciting, silly, tiny projects, like creating scarves. I think I've definitely had a lot of fun the last 2 months exploring every nook and cranny of my identity and the projects that I want to work on. So as I said, thank you and stay weird. And I hope you've enjoyed listening to me talk about what I've been up to in the last 2 months. Thanks.